Hi, hello, my name's Ollie Bliss and this is my channel Book Draw, and for those who don't know, I enjoy looking at queer fiction and I make little images out of it. Today I am reviewing the book The Well of Loneliness by Radclyffe. This book is a queer classic, and particularly for lesbian fiction. It's in some places described as the first published lesbian novel, so it's a pretty big deal in terms of our history and heritage. It also happens to be a fantastic read. The book focuses on the protagonist Stephen Gordon, who is growing up in Morton in the Malverns, and I personally relate to this area of the country as it surrounds the area which I grew up. I grew up in a tiny town called Newent, which is on the border between the southwest of England and borders onto Wales. If I go a little bit north, I enter into the West Midlands, and that's where Malvern is based. I might put a little map up here to give you a rough depiction of where that area is. This is a book of 5 parts, and I will be just focusing on the first 3 for this review. There will be some spoilers ahead, so if you want to keep this book a surprise for yourself, please don't watch this review until after you have read it. So in the beginning of book 1, Stephen is born. Stephen is a girl, however the father kind of had in his mind that his firstborn child would be a boy. Doesn't see any reason why he should have to call his daughter anything other than Stephen, which is what he desired. It's an interesting starting point for Stephen's character development. She experiences her first crush on Miss Collins. I particularly enjoyed reading about Stephen's desires and without fully understanding what she actually was drawn to and attracted to by Miss Collins, and then how she acts in terms of a jealous rage when she sees her kissing another man. During this time she's also dressing up as in boys' clothing, and she's playing out kind of male characters, so it begins to look at her gender identity on that level as well. She has a very loving friendship with her father, and she has quite a frosty hands-off relationship with her mother. Around the age of 18, Stephen becomes a leaner but broad-shouldered woman, and she chooses to crop her hair shorter. She's beginning to display this fluidity with her gender identity. Stephen isn't like the other girls that she knows, and doesn't have the same kind of interests as they do. She's into hunting, she's into her horses, she's into being outdoors. She then forms a very strong friendship with Martin, who's Canadian, and their bond grows really platonically. And it's really endearing to see that flourish. However, it takes a dramatic twist when Martin actually tries to propose to Stephen, and she's like, "No, that is not what I wanted." And she has a bit of a freak out, and it ends their relationship at that point. He does come back into significance towards the end of the 5th book. And what's nice about their relationship is, at the start, she's struggling with her sense of place in the world. Martin kind of affirms to her like the existence of God through looking at the trees in Canada, where they're huge and majestic, and he's like, how could you not see a presence of God without those? And then towards the latter part of the book, I don't want to spoil too much, but he's confronted with a situation where he's in question of God and she reminds him instead, and that's all tied into her sexuality and the choices that she's making in life. But it's interesting for her to have completed that journey, and then she's passing on her wisdom to Martin and saying, it's okay, there are some good things, you just need to be a courageous person. It is quite a nice transition, and it's a nice arc to look back at and go, she's actually been on a real experience in her character development, and she knows who she is as a person now. Unfortunately, when she reaches 18, her father is crushed by a tree, killing him, and this leaves open lots of questions for Stephen, and she's left in a relationship with the mother, and their relationship disintegrates during that period. By the time she's 21, Stephen is feeling more sexually open. Stephen forms a very strong friendship with Angela Crosby. Angela is an American who has come over with her husband Ralph. Stephen forms this friendship initially, and it kind of blossoms into a few kisses, and she becomes fully infatuated with Angela. And you can see that kind of younger sexual awakening occurring in Stephen, but unfortunately it's not shared by Angela. And Angela is married to Ralph, and she's torn between this desire to pursue this new exciting thing that's happening between her and Stephen, and then it is later revealed she's also pursuing her other sexual exciting feelings with another man called Roger. When Stephen finds this out, she is crushed and confronts her in saying,
I want you to leave Ralph, I can support you, I've got like Lawson, this place that I'm living in, it's huge, like I'm a wealthy woman, we don't need anyone.
But Angela is forming this love affair with Roger, so to kind of distract her ongoing relationship with Roger, she basically shares love letters from Stephen to Angela to her partner Ralph. Ralph loses it, ends up squealing on Stephen by sending a letter to Stephen's mum explaining this situation and her love affair. The mum then loses her mind and basically says, I always knew there was something wrong with you, I never really wanted to touch you and I thought there was something wrong with me, but now I know it's you. Which really depicts the kind of feeling and atmosphere of that time, and it's very unfortunate. This leaves Stephen in a sense of disarray and is like,
fine, I will go over to Cannes and I'll leave you, I don't need this.
And she ends up having a moment where she goes into her father's library, and for whatever reason she opens up this locked bookcase. She comes across this initial battered old book by Krafft Ebing and discovers that in the margins of this book there are lots of references to both herself and themes around her sexuality. She discovers references to her sexual inversion, as it was known at that time. So by a sexual inversion, talking about the fact that from what was the expected norm, the binary norm of a woman who would be attracted to a man, that is inverted and she is attracted to a woman. So I'm going to go into that in more detail for my image, which I'll be doing next, and you'll be able to see me looking at that situation in more detail. But for me it was a very prominent moment in Stephen's development, realising that her father had always known about her sexual identity but never confided in her or helped explain it to her, which is really sad and tragic because he's actually dead, but was supportive, and she never had the chance to actually talk to him and kind of work out her feelings, and she had to do it in isolation, which is incredibly sad. In the latter half of the book she ends up going over to Cannes. She writes her first novel. She then is interrupted by the war, and that's when she meets her most significant relationship with Mary. They end up moving over to Paris. She becomes liberated in her sexual freedom, and she meets other lesbian type people in her life. They basically start forming their own community. I won't go into how this kind of changes and the problems that they face, because I want people to read it and engage with the book. It is a really interesting look at that period of time. I'd recommend that people check out Winx and Ink's video, which looks at her first tattoo, which is of the Well of Loneliness, but she also compares how the Great War, World War One, informed how this book was received. Additionally, if you want to learn more about Radclyffe Hall, I recommend people check out Louise's channel. I will link both of these in the description below so you have an opportunity to see them, but the pair of them provide some really clear insights about Radclyffe Hall and the Well of Loneliness, and just are generally great channels to check out too. Anyway, I think this has been enough for me for now. I will see you again soon, and if you have read The Well of Loneliness, please let me know which were some of your favourite bits. Where did you identify with the lead character, or were there other characters that you identified with more? I personally really liked Puddle, but I will go into that in more detail later on. Okay, bye!